Ala residents flock to Honda Bay to fight against proposed new marina. Signs and bollards destroyed after a driver crashed near a popular St. Julian's bar, and traumatic Talbarani incident in Zaytun remembered 35 years on. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo. Johnathan, Cilia here, joined by Yannick. It's a bit of a windy and dreary Tuesday evening, but do not worry. We are here to brighten up your evening with some interesting stories, as well as a special guest interview with artificial intelligence expert Alexiei Dingli at the end of the show, so definitely stay tuned for that. But before that, Yannick is here with the details on the first story. Yannick?
Yeah, so all our residents, including the town's mayor, Paul Buttigieg, gathered in Honda Rumin today, eager to follow a site visit related to an appeal before an environmental tribunal about a proposed yacht marina development in the bay. Residents were urged to attend the meeting by Buttigieg, who has led opposition to the plans for the marina and the picturesque bay for years now. In fact, today's site visit is the latest in a series of developments in what has essentially become a 19-year saga related to this marina. And Movement Graffiti, in fact, they posted photos online from the event, which saw scores of residents descend on the bay to voice their opposition to the project. Now, it's not that common that, the public would attend a site visit like this, but Buttigieg was adamant and made it a point to get as many people to go down there to voice their opposition, and so as a reminder that residents of the locality do not want it. Obviously, the application remains alive. But so too is residents' desire to oppose it. Recently, it was reported that government was considering buying the site back. The PN actually proposed, and that would happen if they were in government. So it remains to be seen where this will go, but it's a very long story.
Now, on the topic of potential destruction, and moving on to the next story, a driver who crashed into a popular bar in St. Julian's last night actually emerged unscathed and even refused medical attention as an ambulance appeared on the site. So at around 11:45 last night in George Borge Olivier in St. Julian's, a Chinese national crashed his car. The car actually ended up overturning and flipping, and it took out a number of signs, bollards, as well as some electrical equipment that was outside the bar. The City of London bar, a very popular bar that I'm sure many of our readers have attended and visited. Now, what's interesting is, even though fortunately the driver in this case was not injured and there were no injuries, this is just the latest in a series of car crashes that have seen cars overturning, flipping, ending up on their side, if not having fatal consequences, as we saw in Shamshia just a few weeks back. So seriously, people, if you are out there driving, if you're driving at night and the wind is going crazy and it's rainy, do be a bit careful while on the roads.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Malta's roads aren't great, but there's no need to make matters worse, that driving dangerously. On to our next story. The Nationalist Party today remembered the traumatic events which took place 35 years ago, when thousands of party supporters descended on Zaytun for a mass meeting, but ended up finding themselves in what was effectively a war zone. So the event, which took place 35 years ago, saw thousands of PN supporters marching along Talbarani Road, behind the truck with the PN leader Edifin Akadami in it, Deputy Leader Guido DeMarco. Suddenly, they started being pelted with stones. Police shot tear gas at the mass meeting. The incident is one of the black, let's say, chapters in the country's recent history. And in fact, the incident was followed up by the murder of Raymond Caruana just 6 days later. As I said, the events took place 35 years ago. They're a good reminder of the fact that the country has been through these moments of political violence, and it's always good to remember, especially these events from our recent history.
Absolutely. I'm sure our older readers will remember this. Maybe they were there, maybe they have some friends or loved ones that were there. A lot of our younger readers were actually unaware of these, this incident, so this is definitely one of the biggest, arguably one of the most important kind of incidents that happened in the 80s that led to, such a strong political outing in the 90s. And just today, current PN leader Bernard Grech, shared the images images from the fateful day. He shared images of Eddie Fenekadami there. He shared images of people running as smoke can be seen behind them. It was actually quite interesting. And, you know, he said, you know, he wanted to recount what he called, quote, one of the worst attacks on the freedom of speech in our country, where he said, quote, that day thousands of Maltese and Gozotans found the police, those meant to protect them, ready for them with tear gas, to intimidate them and stop them from attending a PN mass meeting, but violence didn't win, perseverance did. So I do invite you to go check out a bit of our history on lovinmalta.com today, where we recount what happened. I mean, you know, when you look at the details, 2 people had the tips of their noses bitten off. You know, as Yannick pointed out, a few days later, someone was murdered. So it was truly, you know, some chaos and fearful days for Malta. So I do suggest you find out more about that if you are interested in history. Moving on to the next story, talking about biting, actually, a bit of a strange story coming out of Malta. So this month, one person was actually taken to Mater Dei Hospital after being bitten by an exotic animal in Malta. Now, if you were not aware, Malta, as of 2019 at least, had 46 exotic animals on the island. That includes 4 species of monkeys, 7 pumas, 7 tigers, 8 lions, and even a small type of crocodile. So in Malta, we have at least 7 licensed zoos, and a lot of these animals are kept in these zoos, though a lot of them are also kept in homes that have been kind of outfitted to keep these animals. If you remember, in 2019, a puma had actually been spotted on the roof of homes in Vgura. Lovin Malta had actually spoken to the owner of this puma, who showed us images and explained how his house had basically become this large network made specifically for the puma. So do let us know in the comments below whether you think that's acceptable or not. But either way, it seems that one person was bitten by an exotic animal in Malta just this month.
Yeah, the information was provided by Health Minister Chris Fern in response to a parliamentary question by PNMP Mario Gallia, who has, especially in recent weeks, voiced concerns about, you know, zoos, exotic animals on a number of occasions. He's called for regulations to be implemented. He's questioned, you know, whether Malta is a country that can actually take certain exotic animals, and has essentially, like, basically lashed out at the minister on a number of occasions, who he has accused of bowing down to pressure by zookeepers in Malta and not publishing basic regulations that would govern having such animals. On to our final story. A local artist has launched an anti-demolition campaign in an attempt to raise awareness about the late modernist Villa Vincenti, as well as why it should be protected. So the St. Julian's Villa and its beautiful architectural style are currently facing demolition, much to the disappointment of residents of the area. Artist and illustrator Nicole Shibaras de Bono is one of those people. And she has decided to launch this artistic campaign as a response to it. She was writing on her website, she said, you know, a hallmark of the Maltese architectural modernism is under threat of demolition and may soon become a building that we can remember only in our memories because of the wants of the greedy. She basically launched a series of illustrations of the villa on her social media platform, together with tidbits of information about the architect Gustavo Vincenti. As part of her campaign, she also included a call, you know, on people to submit representations to the project through her website.
You know, I love it when art takes on, you know, social issues. Just a month or two ago, we had the Gozotan artist who painted that beautiful portrait of Lasana Sise in a Gozotan church, which led to national discussion on how we treat migrants and how we treat the foreigners on the island. Having an artist now take on, you know, construction, development, and demolishing of these beautiful architectural gems that we have around the island is also a brilliant way to use art. So as Yannick said, if you do feel strongly about keeping this villa up, the representations period is still open until the 10th of December, so you can send your opinion to representations@pa.org.mt. Now that brings us to the end of the first part of today's show. We're going to cut to a quick video clip, and when we're back in the office, we'll have AI expert Alexiei Dingli in here to discuss the future of artificial intelligence on the island.
Everyone says that young people are the future, but all too often the powers that be suddenly become deaf when we want our voices heard. That's where the European Parliament has stepped in, giving young people a platform to share their ideas in one of the most powerful forums in the world. The European Youth event took place between the 8th and 9th of October, bringing together 10,000 young people to discuss more than 2,000 ideas for the future of Europe. with the 20 most popular ideas being presented to Parliament on the 22nd and 23rd of October. They're an incredible set of proposals covering some of the crucial issues facing the EU. It's clear that the environment is a priority for young people who presented concrete ideas looking to make recycling easier around the block and ensure that companies are held accountable for their role in climate change, something which has been lacking for far too long. Rule of law concerns in the EU should also be addressed, with young people demanding a more effective mechanism to protect the EU values that we all take for granted. What's clear is that young people support a federal Europe and are ready to work together to help solve today's and tomorrow's problems. Whether that's boosting our healthcare systems, our educational structures, and our digital landscape, or promoting multilingualism and a stronger asylum seekers policy. Ultimately, young people are demanding that we start learning from our mistakes to help create better policies in the future for you and me. How do you say awesome work in 24 languages? Well, whatever the case, I'm sure that young people will certainly have the answer. Should young people be the drivers of change? Let us know in the comments below.
Welcome back. We're here with Professor Alexiei Dingli, who's an AI expert and University of Malta academic. Also, someone who has great taste in shirts.
We're matching.
So we're going to be speaking about artificial intelligence, specifically its kind of impact on social media and the world we interact with every day, I suppose. So to start off with, first of all, thank you for accepting our invitation. We often hear about AI, you know, maybe some people think it's something still science fiction related, but how prevalent is it in the world around us? So let's start off from there, as in the stuff we use every day. How?
Okay, so first of all, AI is extremely prevalent. In fact, each and every one of you are using it each and every day, okay, and you're very much dependent on it. But the only problem with AI is that, you know, there's no label which says this uses AI and this doesn't. So a lot of people do not realize that. But let me give you a few examples. One of them, email. So every time we write an email, there's a spell checker now that's helping us write that email. And there's also the spam filter that's also filtering our emails. So that's AI. A second example, social media. When we go on social media, what we see on the feed is decided by an AI, actually. If we go on Google, the searches are done by an AI. Apart from that, most of today's modern devices have within them some sort of AI module. So it could be the air conditioner, the climate control, the oven, the cars. So practically our life is infused with AI, but we're not realizing our dependency on this technology.
And is it fair to say that it's increasing every year? So for example, you mentioned social media. Would the Facebook of, say, 10 years ago have used the same level of AI?
No, it's very different. If we just look at social media, the Facebook of 10 years ago didn't have all the data which it has today. I mean, just keep in mind that most of the data in the world, so 90% of that data, was created in the past 2 years. So imagine the huge volume of data which we have today. Now, if you feed that data to an AI, the amount of things, the connections which it can create is something out of this world. So definitely no, the AI of 10 years ago was very different. Apart from that, in the past 10 years, there were some major improvements in AI as well. One with regards to processing power. We have so much more processing power today with cloud computing. Second, with algorithms, they developed so much that we're at a level where they are way beyond human capacity in some cases. So you know, when you combine these two together, you get this huge boost in power, which was unthinkable 10 years ago.
And when you talk about that kind of boost in power, so actually, from the get-go, like, social media, where do you stand on it? Is it kind of overall positive, overall negative? You know, we hear a lot about Facebook and kind of the effect it has. Just for some context.
All right. No, my personal opinion is that social media, like practically anything else, really is a tool. Okay, and like any tool, it depends how you use it. Now, the big problem which I see with social media is that a lot of people were not taught how to use that tool. And that is where the abuse and the problems start arising. Now, of course, if people are taught, then it would be a fantastic tool, which you know, all of us use. Even I am an avid user of social media, but you need to know how to use that tool properly.
And what are some of the ways in which kind of AI can be used, for example, to promote disinformation, fake news? Like, that could make it a problem for us
Okay.
online?
If we stay on the concept of social media, all right. One of the problems which we've seen throughout the pandemic was the fact that Mark Zuckerberg, who's the owner of Facebook, okay, had decided when the pandemic actually started, he said, listen, we want Facebook to be a force for good. We want to promote vaccinations. We want to promote sort of the rise of good practices. Now, what actually happened was the inverse. Why? Because there were anti-vaxxers lobby that were using Facebook against this drive for vaccination. And the result is, of course, quite catastrophic, because it gets people not to get their vaccine. So as you can see, it can be manipulated, and that's what worries me really, because if Mark Zuckerberg, who's the owner, cannot even control his own tool, I mean, who's going to control it?
I know. I mean, that's actually quite shocking in the sense that if this thing is beyond the point where its own creator can't train it in, that doesn't bode very well for the future. Something I'm curious about is like, so again, we talk about social media and how kind of our data is constantly being used to kind of tailor and manipulate our experience online. How much of the data about us would you say is used today? Is this just the start? Are we kind of have we barely scratched the surface of all the data there is about us?
Can I answer too much? Okay. No, a few years back we did an experiment, and we did an experiment. We collected some likes from people who, of course, consented to our experiments. The likes were generic likes. So, I don't know, your favorite pop group or the latest book which you read or whatever. And given that information, we could also predict your other likes, which you didn't disclose to us, with 80% accuracy. Wow. Now we managed to achieve this with just 10 likes. Now imagine Facebook has much more than that data about you. So you can't even imagine the amount of predictions they can do for every person. I like to say that, Facebook knows us much more than we know ourselves. And don't think that, if I just like a few things here and there, it's okay. Because what happens with AI is that once they have the data, then they do predictions. So they create a profile for the person and they predict what he likes. So if I like, now I'm giving a stupid example, okay? If I like Metallica, I don't know, they can predict, for example, my sexual orientation. They can predict which party I am going to vote for. They can predict my religious affiliation. So the power of AI is giving that data, and given the data of a lot of people, they can make these very powerful predictions. And then, of course, they target you and they try to maybe sway a little bit your opinions here and there.
And what are the implications of this on kind of how society is set up?
The implications.
Do you have concerns?
Yes, I have a lot of concerns. I mean, the implications, we've seen them when the case of Cambridge Analytica came out. Too. I mean, Cambridge Analytica was a private company. They were getting data from Facebook of each and every one of us, and then they were using it to target specific ads against us. All right, so they've been attributed that, Brexit happened because they intervened on the people. Trump got elected because they intervened in those elections. So as you can see, these let's say powerful groups or lobbies, in this case it was a private company getting a lot of money from the people interested, directly interested, could sway public opinion. All right, and the problem with Facebook is, apart from this, the algorithm itself also tends to direct people into these echo chambers. Okay, so what is an echo chamber? So I voice my opinion. I say, listen, I'm against, I don't know, hunting. Okay, and all of a sudden I see another post against hunting, and I like it because it's very similar to what I say. Then I start seeing another post and another post. So I start to think that everybody in my community is against hunting. How is it possible that there are people in favor of hunting? And that leads me to this echo chamber. It's echoing my own opinion. And if you push it further, it leads to polarization. And if you have a look what's happening in the United States, the two parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, are extremely polarized, even though, some of the opinions are very similar.
And given how complex all of this is, what hope is there for the regular man on the street to be able to understand it? Do we know what our rights are? Is this something we're aware of enough?
I always say that, the most important thing is to advocate education. So we need to teach people, especially the younger generation, because they're the people of tomorrow, no, the adults of tomorrow. But also there should be legislation to protect us as well. I mean, after the case of Cambridge Analytica, we got GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which, it's not a perfect law, but it's a good start, I think. But we need to do much more. Now, what happened there is that we had the case of Cambridge Analytica and we did the legislation. We cannot be reactive, we have to be proactive now, because things are growing at a much bigger scale, so we need to take action before something bad really happens.
And obviously, so we've discussed a lot about kind of the more negative side to it, but presumably there is also a positive side, even from your work.
There are many positive sides.
What's the flip side? Because obviously there are two sides to every story.
The flip side is, of course, that you can do very good connections. I mean, you connect with people on the other side of the world. So this was very difficult before, unless you know them. Apart from that, you can share as well a lot of stuff.
But when it comes to AI as well, so like AI's influence on us, on the way we live, presumably it's also positive.
No, in general I say that AI is a positive thing, otherwise I wouldn't be advocating it. I think it will change our life for the better. So, in elements such as health, for example, recently we launched an app for pain management. So the AI manages to help that person distract from the pain up to 80%. So it's a powerful technology.
So they feel 80% less pain.
Yes, after they use the VR headset with AI technology infused in it. So this is just one example. If you take, for example, in cancer research, the processing of the medical imaging takes only a few seconds now. I mean, if you gave it to a doctor, the doctor would take at least 45 minutes to analyze one of these scans. So we are reducing, of course, the timing. That's on the medical. Another project which I have is, for example, in education, personalized education. Okay. So you are in class. The teacher gives a set of exercises, but each and every one of the children in class receives a personalized set of exercises based upon the ability of that child. So, children are no longer overwhelmed now.
Based on how they read it. So, as in, how does it know what their ability is?
Okay, so the AI learns about their abilities. So, it's a process, of course. It doesn't happen overnight, but with a few, similar to what I said before with social media, with a few interaction with the system, the AI can predict the level of that child. And then, of course, it customizes the exercises based upon that level. So every area will be impacted with AI. And to be honest with you, that's why I like the AI. I like AI because it's a very horizontal area and I can touch different topics at one go. I think it will revolutionize the way our world will progress in the coming years. It's a fast revolution, and if you take COVID, I mean, it's sped it up even further. But we have to prepare for it because I expect a lot of changes in the coming years as well.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Dingli. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Lovin Daily. Thank you very much for watching, and have an evening full of lovin'.